In the early hours of the morning at Tsavo East National Park, an unusual stillness marked the dry, dusty plains where elephants usually roamed in steady, purposeful herds. Ranger Kofi's routine patrol was interrupted when his eyes caught sight of a lone elephant lying on the ground, motionless and apart from her family. This was a sight both rare and alarming. Elephants are social creatures that rarely isolate themselves without cause. So, seeing one so still and alone immediately signaled to Kofi that something was gravely wrong. Approaching carefully, he noted that the elephant's body was stretched out flat against the earth, her massive frame unnaturally still except for faint, labored breaths. The surrounding grasses whispered softly in the gentle breeze, and the birds sang their morning songs. Yet here, in this small clearing, time seemed paused around her. There were no visible wounds, no sign of external trauma. But the weight of her exhaustion was palpable. Her skin, thick and wrinkled, was coated with a fine layer of dust, evidence of her struggle through the harsh environment. The elephant's eyes, half-closed and weary, seemed to reflect an inner battle, a battle that Kofi understood all too well. Kofi knelt beside her, his presence quiet and non-threatening. His training reminded him that animals in distress are often frightened by sudden movements or loud noises. So, instead of rushing to intervene, he chose to stay calm, letting his mere presence offer a kind of comfort. The elephant responded with a low rumble, a fragile sound that conveyed both pain and a tentative connection. This was no time for force, but for patience and gentle support. The ranger's mind worked through possible reasons for her condition. Was she suffering from dehydration in the relentless heat? Was there a hidden injury or illness that prevented her from standing? Or, as Kofi soon suspected, was she in labor or recovering from a difficult birth? Elephants' pregnancies are long and demanding, and complications are not uncommon in the wild, where medical help is distant and nature can be unforgiving. Kofi's experience told him that if this elephant remained down for too long, the risks multiplied rapidly. Predators might sense vulnerability, dehydration and exhaustion could worsen, and without the support of her herd, survival chances were slim. Every moment was precious. He gently placed his hand on her thick skin, feeling the slow, uneven pulse beneath. The connection was fragile but vital, a reminder that even in moments of crisis, life persisted. Kofi whispered soothing words, not because the elephant understood language, but because his calm tone helped reduce stress. The elephant's eyes flickered open briefly, showing pain but also a glimmer of recognition and trust in the ranger's presence. Nearby, the landscape stretched wide and open, the dry earth cracked and warmed by the rising sun. Sparse bushes swayed quietly, and distant calls of birds echoed through the vastness. The natural world carried on in rhythm, indifferent yet connected to the drama unfolding here. This elephant's plight was a thread in the intricate fabric of life in Tsavo, where every creature depended on balance and survival. Kofi radioed the veterinary team, his voice steady despite the urgency in his heart. He knew expert care was needed, but time was limited. His role was to keep the elephant calm and safe until help could arrive. His watchfulness was an essential shield against the dangers that come with vulnerability. The lurking predators, the harsh sun, and the relentless passage of time that threatened to steal her strength. Throughout this time, the elephant's body showed signs of struggle and weakness. Her legs twitched faintly but lacked the strength to push her upright. The delicate rhythm of her breathing hinted at exhaustion, yet beneath that frailty was an unspoken will to survive. This silent tension hung in the air, the uncertain balance between life and death in the wild. Kofi's calm presence contrasted with the tension of the moment. He understood that nature's course was often harsh and indifferent, but human care could tip the scales, offering a chance where otherwise there might be none. His gentle touch, his quiet words, and his vigilant watch were acts of respect, acknowledging the elephant's strength while recognizing her current need for help. The elephant's isolation added to the sense of urgency. Without her herd nearby, she lacked the protection and support that elephants rely on for safety and recovery. In the wild, family bonds are critical, especially during difficult times like birth or illness. Being alone increased her risk of exposure and predation, intensifying the stakes of the situation. This first chapter captures a moment frozen between hope and despair, the fragile stillness before a turning point. It is a story told in breath and heartbeat, in the soft rumble of a vulnerable giant and the steady hand of a dedicated ranger. The world around them is vast and indifferent, yet here, in this quiet clearing, human care and animal resilience meet in a delicate balance. Every detail, the dust on her skin, the flicker in her eyes, the careful movements of Kofi, speaks to the slow unfolding of a crisis. The elephant is caught in a struggle for life that is both physical and deeply primal. The stakes are clear. If she cannot rise soon, the dangers will grow, and survival may slip beyond reach. But there is also a tentative trust, a silent agreement between human and animal that this moment, this fragile breath, is precious. In the end, this opening scene sets the tone for the story ahead, a story not of drama, but of quiet endurance, respect, and the delicate threads that bind lives together in the wild. It is a reminder that sometimes the most profound stories are those told in stillness, in the gentle watchfulness of a ranger, and in the fragile courage of a mother elephant fighting to live. As the sun continued its steady ascent over the vast plains of Tsavo East National Park, the solitary female elephant shifted her immense body with great effort. Each movement a delicate negotiation between instinct and exhaustion. The earlier stillness that had held her in a fragile pause now gave way to subtle signs that the ancient process of birth was underway. Ranger Kofi watched attentively, his trained eyes reading the language of her body, the slow tightening and relaxing of her broad belly, the gentle swaying of her legs as they struggled to bear her weight, and the shallow, deliberate breaths that hinted at both pain and determination. This was no ordinary rest. It was labor, a natural yet taxing event that in the wild carried risks amplified by every passing minute. The elephant's skin was slick with a thin sheen of sweat, a testament to the exertion required to endure the heat and the physical demands of bringing new life into the world. Her eyes, heavy-lidded and glazed with fatigue, flickered with moments of awareness, flickers that betrayed both the depth of her suffering and the primal will to survive. The surrounding landscape, a mixture of dusty earth and sparse acacia trees, remained still as if in quiet reverence to the fragile moment unfolding. The calls of distant birds punctuated the otherwise hushed morning air, yet nothing disturbed the slow, purposeful rhythm of her labor. Kofi understood the precariousness of the situation immediately. Elephants are powerful animals, yet the process of birth in the wild is fraught with danger, and exhaustion can quickly tip the balance from survival to tragedy. He maintained a respectful distance, aware that his presence must be a calm and steady support rather than a source of stress. His eyes scanned her body for signs of distress beyond the evident fatigue, the tension in her limbs, the labored rise and fall of her chest, the occasional soft moan that escaped her throat, a sound that echoed ancient struggles repeated across millennia. The gentle sway of her massive frame was both a natural response to pain and an instinctive effort to ease the pressure building within her. Every breath she drew was a measured effort, each movement a small victory against the weight of exhaustion pressing down upon her. The threat was clear. Without timely assistance, the risks to both mother and calf were grave. Dehydration, weakness, and the possibility of complications during labor could quickly turn a natural event into a crisis. Kofi's thoughts turned to the veterinary team, whose expertise might offer a lifeline, and he reached for his radio with a steady hand, calmly requesting immediate support. Time was the most critical factor. The longer the elephant labored in exhaustion, the slimmer the chances for a successful birth and survival of both lives. Despite the urgency, Kofi's approach remained patient and measured. He whispered softly, a brief reassurance that was not meant for understanding but for comfort. "You're almost there." The elephant's ears twitched slightly at the sound, and she turned her head toward him, a small but significant sign of recognition and tentative trust amid her vulnerability. Around them, the land held a quiet stillness, the vastness of the park stretching out like an endless canvas of earth and sky. Dust hung in the air, stirred faintly by a gentle breeze carrying the scent of dry grass and distant acacia blossoms. The natural world continued in its measured rhythms, indifferent yet intimately connected to the drama unfolding in this small clearing. The elephant's isolation was a stark reminder of the dangers she faced. Separated from her herd, she lacked the protection and support that family groups provide, especially during such a critical time. In the wild, the bonds of the herd offer not only safety but also emotional strength, and her solitude amplified the risks she confronted. Kofi remained vigilant, observing the subtle signs of change as labor progressed. The elephant's trunk occasionally swept the ground, a restless motion that betrayed discomfort and anticipation. Her legs trembled beneath her, muscles strained by the prolonged effort to remain upright and responsive. The low rumbles she emitted were a mixture of pain and focus, natural sounds that communicated her state without dramatizing it. She was neither resigned nor defeated. She was responding as nature intended, caught in the delicate balance between the physical demands of labor and the resilience of life. The heat of the sun continued to build, pressing down on her tired body and adding to the burden she bore. Kofi understood that every moment brought a new risk. If she weakened further, she might collapse, leaving her vulnerable to predators or unable to complete the birth. The unborn calf's chances were equally fragile, dependent on the mother's strength and the timely arrival of care if complications arose. Despite these threats, there was also a quiet hope in the air. The elephant's slow, swaying movement suggested an enduring spirit, a will to carry through the ordeal. Her eyes, though clouded with exhaustion, held a faint spark of life that refused to be extinguished. Kofi's presence was a steadying force, a calm witness to a profound and ancient event. His hands, gentle and sure, rested lightly on the elephant's skin, offering reassurance without intrusion. The connection between human and animal in this moment was subtle but significant, an unspoken pact of respect and care. The natural setting framed this scene of vulnerability and strength with a stark beauty. The cracked earth beneath the elephant, the scattered leaves fluttering on the breeze, and the distant hills painted in soft morning light all underscored the harsh yet tender reality of life in the wild. Here, birth was not a guaranteed miracle but a fragile chance, a moment suspended between survival and loss. Kofi's watchful eyes and calm demeanor embodied the quiet hope that human compassion could tilt that balance, offering a lifeline in a place where nature's laws were often unforgiving. This chapter captures the slow unfolding of labor against a backdrop of exhaustion and risk. It reveals the physical toll on the mother elephant and the emotional weight carried by those who care for her. The stakes are ever present. If the mother cannot sustain her strength, both she and her unborn calf face severe danger. Yet amid the strain, there is a fragile grace in her steady movements, a testament to resilience and the timeless cycle of life. The narrative avoids drama, instead honoring the realism of the moment, an observation of nature's truth, witnessed with compassion and patience. Kofi's quiet voice, his careful watchfulness, and the elephant's measured efforts all weave together into a story of endurance. It is a reminder that survival in the wild depends not only on strength, but also on subtle connections between mother and calf, between animal and human, and between life and the vast, unpredictable landscape. The chapter ends poised on the edge of change, holding space for what comes next in this quiet, powerful journey. The warm light of the African sun settled over the plains, casting a steady glow as the elephant's labor deepened into its final phase. Ranger Kofi stood quietly nearby, joined now by the veterinary team, who had arrived just in time. There was a careful tension in the air, not one of fear, but of profound respect for the process unfolding before them. The mother's body tensed and contracted with increasing strength, her breaths growing sharper and more urgent. Despite her exhaustion, she remained remarkably still, grounded by instinct and the slow, rhythmic force of nature's design. The surrounding landscape was hushed, except for the occasional soft murmur from the mother and the subtle movements of the team, who kept their distance, allowing the birth to proceed naturally while ready to intervene if necessary. The elephant's trunk twitched gently, brushing at the dry earth beneath her as she responded to the surges of labor. Her legs, though trembling, held firm as she leaned into the powerful contractions. Kofi observed her carefully, noting the small changes in her expression, a slight narrowing of the eyes, the twitch of an ear, signs that told the story of pain mixed with determination. The veterinary team worked silently, their presence calm and unobtrusive, prepared to offer assistance but reluctant to disturb the delicate moment. The mother's breathing was heavy but steady, each exhale releasing tension, each inhale gathering strength for the next wave. As the calf began to emerge, the tension in the clearing grew palpable yet restrained. The newborn was still mostly hidden, wrapped in the wet membranes of birth, its small movements delicate and uncertain. Kofi could hear the faintest sound, a soft, irregular gasp carried on the warm breeze, the fragile first breath that marked the beginning of new life. The mother's body trembled as she pushed with effort, the slow emergence a testament to both nature's difficulty and its resilience. Her eyes remained fixed ahead, vacant yet focused, as if rooted in a space between pain and release. The surrounding earth bore the imprint of the birth. Dust stirred gently as the mother shifted her weight, and the grass flattened beneath her great bulk. The air was still except for the low rumble the mother emitted, a sound of connection and reassurance to the calf now fully visible beneath her. The newborn, slick and vulnerable, lay quietly against the ground, its legs folded beneath it, eyes closed, and breaths shallow but present. Kofi stepped closer, careful not to startle either mother or calf, and gently reached out to clear the wet membranes from the newborn's face, an act done with reverence and care. The stakes were unmistakable. The calf's survival depended on these fragile first moments, the ability to breathe clearly, to respond to the mother's nurturing, and to find strength to rise. Kofi's watchful gaze shifted between the two, reading the signs that would indicate success or trouble. The mother's trunk swept across the calf's small body, a tender gesture that reinforced their bond, a silent communication that life was here and must be protected. Despite the exhaustion evident in her posture, the mother's attention was wholly devoted to the calf, a powerful force anchoring both lives. Time seemed to slow as the birth concluded, nature's ancient rhythm unfolding in the heat of the African day. The team remained poised but silent, knowing their role was to support, not interfere unless necessary. The calf's chest rose and fell with shallow breaths, each one a small victory. Kofi's hand rested lightly on the mother's side, a quiet reassurance offered in place of words. The scene was one of raw vulnerability and quiet strength, a moment suspended between survival and the unknown future that lay ahead. The risk remained clear. Any faltering in these early moments could endanger both mother and calf. The mother's ability to nurture and protect hinged on her recovery from labor and her strength to stand. The calf's fragile body depended on its lungs filling with air, its muscles learning to respond, and its connection to the mother's warmth. Kofi's careful observation and the veterinary team's readiness were the lifeline between life and loss. As the sun climbed higher, casting its golden glow across the plains, The fragile new life rested against its mother, a quiet promise of resilience in the harsh world around them. The gentle rhythm of the mother's trunk strokes and the calf's tentative breaths carried an unspoken hope, an unsteady but vital beginning that held the possibility of life continuing against the odds. The newborn calf lay close to its mother's side, its legs trembling beneath a slick, fragile body that had only just begun the struggle of life. Despite the hopeful beginnings, the calf's breaths were shallow and uneven, as if each inhale required an effort far greater than it should. The mother, unusually still, rested beside her calf with an immobility that unsettled Ranger Kofi. Her large eyes, usually so attentive and expressive, stared blankly into the distance, distant and unblinking. There was no sign of the gentle protective movements a mother elephant usually shows, a quiet nudge, a soft rumble, or the tender sweep of her trunk to comfort her young. Instead, she remained motionless, a silent guardian whose detachment weighed heavily in the still air. Kofi's trained gaze searched for clues in her posture, the slight twitch of an ear, and the subtle rise and fall of her breath. The heat of the midday sun beat down on their bodies, drying the dampness from the calf's coat and baking the earth beneath them into hardened dust. The surrounding acacia trees cast faint shadows, but there was no relief from the pressing weight of uncertainty. The wide expanse of the park seemed indifferent to the fragile moment, its vastness a stark contrast to the intimate scene unfolding beneath the harsh sky. The calf's weakness was visible in every slight shiver that ran through its small frame. It tried to rise but collapsed back with soft, exhausted sighs, legs folding awkwardly beneath it. The mother's stillness added a layer of concern. Normally, she would have been moving gently, instinctively encouraging her newborn to stand and breathe more deeply. But now, she remained quiet, as if caught in a haze of fatigue or something more troubling. Kofi's instincts sharpened. This was not typical behavior. The mother's silence was a red flag, a subtle but urgent signal that the situation might be more precarious than the birth alone had suggested. Kofi moved slowly, careful to maintain a respectful distance, his eyes never leaving the pair. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, knowing that the survival of both mother and calf hung in the balance. He whispered softly, "It's okay, girl." A calm phrase meant to offer comfort, though the elephant's gaze never shifted toward him. His voice was low and steady. A human presence meant to be a steadying force rather than a disruption. The mother responded only with a faint, barely audible rumble, a sound distant and hollow compared to the nurturing calls usually exchanged between mother and young. The veterinary team had begun their careful examination of the calf, checking its breathing, pulse, and responsiveness. The delicate creature was weak but alive, and every breath it drew was a small victory against the odds. Kofi's attention stayed divided between the mother and calf, watching for any sign that might indicate a shift, movement, a vocalization, any gesture that could mark a return to maternal instinct or a sign of worsening condition. The stakes were stark. If the mother did not respond, the calf's survival would be in jeopardy, dependent on human intervention that was limited by the realities of the wild. The landscape around them was quiet except for the faint sounds of distant wildlife and the rustle of dry grass stirred by a gentle breeze. The acacia branches overhead swayed softly, their leaves whispering secrets carried on the wind. The light shifted slowly as the sun moved westward, bathing the scene in a warm, golden glow that contrasted with the tension beneath it. Kofi's steady presence was a small beacon of calm amid the fragile uncertainty, a reminder that human care could offer a lifeline when nature faltered. Despite the mother's stillness, her immense body remained protective, a barrier shielding the vulnerable calf from the harsh elements and any unseen threats. Her trunk lay limply beside her, no longer reaching out or offering the gentle touches typical of a mother's reassurance. Kofi's mind traced the possible reasons: exhaustion beyond recovery, trauma from the birth, or perhaps a temporary shock that would pass with time. Whatever the cause, it was clear that time was critical. The longer the mother remained unresponsive, the greater the risk that the calf would falter in these earliest hours. Kofi stayed vigilant, knowing that any sudden movement from the mother could signal hope or signal distress. The waiting was heavy, each minute stretching long as they held their silent vigil. The calf's soft gasps for breath echoed faintly in the stillness, each one a fragile thread tethering life to this moment. The ranger's eyes remained fixed, their movements deliberate and careful, honoring the quiet struggle unfolding before them. This was not a moment of celebration, but a moment suspended, a fragile pause where life and uncertainty coexisted. Kofi's calm watchfulness was both a comfort and a necessity, a human presence offering steady observation as nature's course hung in delicate balance. Every breath, every heartbeat mattered, and the risk was clear. Without a change, both mother and calf faced the possibility of loss. The sun continued its slow descent, shadows lengthening across the earth as the park held its breath. The mother's distant eyes never left the horizon, yet beneath her stillness was a strength that was difficult to measure but impossible to ignore. Kofi remained by her side, silent but present, a witness to the quiet endurance that defined this fragile family. The vigil continued, measured and hopeful, bound by the silent language of survival that carried them through the long hours ahead. After hours of stillness that had stretched into an uneasy quiet, the mother elephant finally moved. Her massive frame shifted ever so slightly, the weight of exhaustion still evident but yielding to a deeper, more instinctual force. Slowly, with deliberate care, she lifted her trunk and reached out toward the trembling calf nestled weakly at her side. The movement was gentle and tentative, as if testing the fragile connection between them. This subtle gesture, a soft nudge against the calf's side, broke the silence that had held the air heavy with uncertainty. It was not a dramatic display, but in its quiet simplicity lay a profound message: recognition, awakening, and the fragile rekindling of a maternal bond. Kofi watched closely, his breath steady but heart quietly holding hope. The mother's touch was light, careful not to startle, and it elicited a small response from the calf, a faint stir, a barely audible sigh that spoke volumes in this vulnerable moment. The vast landscape around them seemed to pause in concert, the gentle breeze softening the dust that hung in the air, carrying with it the faint sense of earth and dry grass. The acacia trees nearby stood as silent witnesses to this intimate act, their leaves whispering softly in the late afternoon sun. The moment was an unspoken reassurance that life, fragile and uncertain, was still fighting to hold on. Despite the mother's exhaustion, the gesture revealed a return to awareness, a re-engagement with the calf that was essential to its survival. Her eyes, once distant and vacant, now flickered with a glimmer of focus, softening with a subtle tenderness. The stillness that had clouded the air began to lift, replaced by a cautious optimism that was mirrored in Kofi's calm demeanor. He whispered softly, "It's okay, girl," a quiet encouragement meant to honor the mother's instinct and the tentative bond that was reawakening. The mother's trunk continued its gentle caress, sweeping over the calf's small, fragile body as if reassuring both of them that they were not alone in the vast wild. The calf responded slowly, its limbs trembling but stirring with a newfound strength. It pressed closer to the mother, seeking warmth and protection in the only place it could. The low, rumbling sounds exchanged between them were subtle yet deeply significant, soft calls of connection and comfort that resonated with ancient rhythms. Kofi's careful observations noted every detail: the slight rise and fall of the mother's chest as she breathed steadily, the calf's increasing attempts to nuzzle and shift towards standing. The scene was one of gradual reclamation, where hope began to replace doubt. The risks, however, remained clear and pressing. The mother's condition was still fragile, and the calf's survival depended on sustained care and renewed strength. Any faltering in their connection could jeopardize the delicate balance they had fought to maintain. Kofi and the veterinary team stayed alert, their presence a steadying force ready to intervene if the fragile moment tipped toward crisis. The natural world around them continued in its measured rhythms. The distant calls of other elephants a reminder of the social bonds that the mother and calf might yet rejoin if they survived this critical time. The light shifted as the sun edged lower, casting a golden hue that softened the harshness of the day. The warm breeze carried the scent of dry earth and blossoming acacia, weaving a gentle backdrop for this quiet turning point. The mother's slow, tender movements contrasted with the vastness of the wild, emphasizing the intimate scale of survival amid the expansive, often indifferent landscape. Kofi's calm, respectful approach reflected a deep understanding of the fragile dynamics at play. A patient waiting, a quiet watching, and a readiness to support but never overwhelm. In this moment, the unexpected gesture carried a weight beyond its simplicity. It was a signal that life's ancient bond could endure even after hours of silence, that instinct and love could return despite exhaustion and uncertainty. The connection between mother and calf, though tentative, was the lifeline that tethered them both to hope. The shift in mood, from fear to cautious optimism, was palpable, felt not only by the humans present, but by the land itself, as if nature recognized the fragile resilience unfolding beneath the African sky. As the day waned, the mother continued to nudge and caress, small movements building a rhythm of care that had seemed lost. The calf, though weak, began to respond with greater awareness, each breath a victory, each shift a step toward survival. Kofi's steady gaze remained fixed, embodying a silent promise to protect and nurture this fragile family as long as they needed. The stakes were no less real, but the moment carried a renewed sense of possibility, a quiet celebration of life's persistence in the face of hardship. The subtle touch of the mother's trunk against her calf was more than an act of physical connection. It was an emblem of resilience, an unspoken pledge that despite the fragility of life, the bond between them endured. This unexpected gesture transformed the day's tension into a gentle, cautious hope, a moment held softly between exhaustion and revival, between fear and the promise of tomorrow. The first light of morning stretched across the plains, casting a cool glow over the recovering mother and calf as they remained close together beneath the vast blue sky. The calf, once trembling and weak, now showed the faintest signs of steadiness in its small, uncertain movements. Each gentle nudge from the mother, subtle but persistent, seemed to breathe strength into the fragile body at her side. The elephant's quiet presence, still marked by exhaustion but enlivened by maternal instinct, created a delicate rhythm between them, a slow but steady heartbeat of life that held firm against the lingering threats of vulnerability. Ranger Kofi and the veterinary team observed silently, their vigilance unwavering, knowing every moment carried weight in this fragile recovery. The calf's legs, once unstable and wavering, began to hold more firmly beneath its slender frame, responding to the mother's coaxing with small, careful steps. Though its breath remained uneven, there was a growing steadiness in the rise and fall of its chest, a sign that strength was returning. The mother's trunk moved with tender deliberation, brushing softly over the calf's head and sides, reinforcing a protective bond that was essential to survival. Her eyes, no longer distant, held a quiet awareness, attentive to the calf's needs even as her own energy ebbed and flowed. This exchange, wordless and intimate, spoke volumes in the calm of the early day, life fragile but persisting, guided by instinct and care. The landscape around them stretched wide and open, the golden grasses swaying gently in the breeze that carried the scent of earth and dry foliage. The sky, vast and unbroken, seemed to cradle the small family beneath its expanse, a silent witness to the slow progress of recovery. The heat of the sun was tempered by soft clouds drifting lazily across the horizon, casting shifting shadows that danced lightly over the dusty earth. Kofi's eyes remained sharp, tracking every subtle shift, the slight change in the calf's posture, the mother's measured breathing, the gentle touch of a trunk against vulnerable skin. The stakes were clear. Each moment of progress was precious, each breath a vital link in the chain of survival. Though the calf's condition improved, it remained delicate, its small body vulnerable to the harshness of the wild and the fatigue that still weighed heavily on the mother. The rangers moved with quiet respect, mindful of their role as observers and gentle supporters. Their presence was steady but unobtrusive, a silent promise to intervene if necessary while honoring the natural rhythms of this fragile family. Kofi's calm voice broke the stillness softly once. "You're doing well," he whispered, not to command but to soothe, a human expression of hope offered with humility and care. The mother's trunk swept gently over the calf's side again, a reassuring gesture that conveyed more than words could. Her eyes locked briefly with Kofi's, a silent acknowledgement of the trust growing between human and animal in this rare and tender moment. The calf, responding to this care, attempted a weak nuzzle, pressing close as if seeking warmth and strength from its mother's presence. It was a small step, but in the vast and unpredictable wild, such progress carried enormous significance. The natural world continued around them with quiet consistency. The calls of distant birds punctuated the steady breeze, and the rustling of leaves echoed softly through the acacia trees. The park held its breath in respectful silence, a living backdrop to the slow healing taking place beneath the sky's endless blue. Time itself seemed to stretch, measured by the careful, unhurried movements of mother and calf, each action deliberate, each moment a testament to fragile strength. Kofi's gaze remained vigilant as the hours passed. The risks persisted. Any lapse in the mother's strength or the calf's fragile endurance could tip the balance toward tragedy. Yet the slow recovery was undeniable, a quiet testament to the resilience of life and the enduring power of maternal care. The bond between mother and calf was the lifeline that sustained them, and Kofi and his team knew that their role was to nurture this fragile connection with patience and respect. As the day wore on, the mother's protective presence never faltered, and the calf's tentative steps grew steadier. The bond between them was both delicate and strong, a fragile thread woven from instinct, tenderness, and survival. The vast landscape around them seemed to embrace their small victory, the endless sky arching overhead as if holding its breath in shared hope. In this slow and quiet recovery, every small movement, every gentle touch carried profound weight. The fragile strength of mother and calf was a reminder that even in the harshest environments, life's resilience could endure. The rangers remained by their side, watchful but unobtrusive, bearing witness to a healing that was both natural and extraordinary. The vast, blue sky stretched endlessly above, a silent guardian as mother and calf began to find their footing in a world that demanded both courage and care. The soft stirrings of movement began just after dawn as the mother elephant slowly rose from the earth, her weight shifting with care and deliberate caution. The calf, still fragile but gathering strength with each passing hour, struggled to stand, its legs trembling beneath the burden of new life. Kofi watched intently, a silent witness to the slow, tentative first steps that bridged the gap between vulnerability and survival. The mother's presence was steady and protective, her trunk gently guiding and supporting the calf as it wobbled uncertainly on the dusty ground. The vast plain stretched endlessly around them, a landscape that demanded resilience. Yet here, in this quiet moment, nature's rhythm reasserted itself with unspoken clarity, life continuing despite hardship. Each step the calf took was a fragile declaration of persistence. Its limbs trembled and faltered, muscles unfamiliar with the demands of movement beneath the weight of its own body. The mother remained close, her massive form a reassuring anchor in the wide openness. Her trunk swept softly over the calf's back, a protective gesture as old as time, coaxing and steadying. The dusty earth beneath them bore the imprints of these early, unsteady footprints, marks that spoke of both struggle and hope. Kofi's eyes traced each careful movement, knowing that the calf's survival depended on these first attempts to rise and follow the herd, a journey critical to its future. The mother's eyes, once distant and fatigued, now held a quiet resolve. Her breaths were measured and steady despite the weariness etched into her large frame. She seemed to understand the precariousness of this moment, the necessity of encouraging her calf without pushing too hard. The calf responded in kind, its head lowering and lifting in rhythm with the slow guidance of its mother's trunk. The pair moved in a tentative dance, an intimate exchange of trust and instinct. Around them, the African plains remained calm and watchful. The acacia trees swayed gently, their branches whispering in the morning breeze, while distant calls of other elephants echoed faintly, reminders of the herd waiting beyond the horizon. Kofi kept his distance, his presence respectful and unobtrusive. He whispered softly once, "You're almost there," a quiet encouragement carried gently on the breeze. His voice was a calm thread woven into the natural symphony, meant to soothe rather than command. The veterinary team remained close but silent, ready to intervene only if necessary, aware that this passage was one that nature herself must lead. The risks were undeniable. Each unsteady step carried the weight of survival, and any faltering could mean the difference between life and loss. Yet, in this fragile persistence, there was an undeniable strength, a testament to the unyielding will to live. As the mother and calf moved slowly forward, the faint sounds of the distant herd grew louder, the unmistakable rumble of elephants gathering a balm of belonging. The calf's pace remained cautious but steady, its legs gaining a measure of confidence with every falter and recovery. The mother's trunk continued its gentle guidance, a lifeline tethering the young one to safety and warmth. The dusty path beneath them was marked by the soft impressions of their footsteps, a tangible record of resilience etched into the land. The weight of the moment settled softly over Kofi and the team, a profound reminder that, despite the harshness of the wild, life's fragile threads could weave a path forward. The vast sky above stretched in endless blue, the early light casting long shadows that moved slowly with the sun. The earth was warm beneath their feet, the scent of dry grass and soil mingling in the air. The landscape seemed to hold its breath in reverence, the quiet stillness enveloping the small family as they took these tentative steps toward reunion. The mother's calm resolve and the calf's tentative trust created a quiet power, a natural rhythm of survival unfolding in the heart of the wild. Kofi's eyes softened as he observed the scene, understanding that this fragile journey was both an ending and a beginning. The mother's slow, steady movements guided the calf onward, their steps in harmony despite the calf's lingering weakness. Each step was a silent promise, a commitment to the future amid the uncertainty of the present. The herd waited in the distance, a looming presence of safety and community, and with every careful advance, the bond between mother and calf grew stronger. Kofi remained vigilant, aware that every moment was crucial, yet buoyed by the quiet determination radiating from the pair. The survival of the calf was no longer just a hope, it was becoming a tangible reality written in every careful step forward. The journey was slow, marked by fragility but fueled by instinct. As the mother and calf pressed on, the faint sounds of the herd's calls blended with the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant wind sweeping over the grasslands. The vastness of the African plain bore witness to this small yet significant act of survival, the continuation of life that had been so precariously balanced just hours before. The quiet resolve shared between mother and child was palpable, a silent language of endurance and care that needed no words. In this moment of fragile strength and tentative progress, the story of survival found its quiet crescendo, not in loud triumph, but in the gentle rhythm of first steps taken together beneath the endless sky. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting a warm, amber light that stretched across the dusty plains. The mother elephant, now steady on her feet, moved with quiet determination, her massive frame silhouetted against the fading sky. The calf, still small and unsteady, stayed close, pressing gently against her side as they began their slow journey back toward the waiting herd. The air was heavy with the scent of dry earth and warm grass, carried softly on the gentle evening breeze. Kofi and the team watched from a respectful distance, their bodies still, voices hushed. The moment was delicate, an ending filled with silent hope, and a beginning carried on the whispers of the wild. The mother's steps were measured but purposeful, each movement a testament to the strength that had returned through hours of quiet care. Her trunk swept the dust lightly, brushing the calf's fragile form in a gesture that was both protective and tender. The calf mirrored her cautious rhythm, legs shaking but gaining confidence with every step. There was no rush, no urgency, only the steady pulse of survival returning to its natural flow. The bond between them was palpable in the soft exchange of touch and breath, a language older than words, spoken in the quiet gestures that tethered mother and child against the vastness of the plains. Around them, the landscape softened under the golden light, the long shadows of acacia trees stretching across the earth like gentle arms. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying the distant calls of other elephants, a subtle chorus that welcomed the pair back to their community. Kofi's eyes remained fixed on the small family, noting the slow but sure steps that marked their passage. The risks had been great, the calf's fragile condition, the mother's exhaustion, but now, as they moved steadily forward, the danger began to recede, replaced by a quiet certainty that life would carry on. The team's presence was a silent reassurance, a promise to stand watch but to let nature take its course. The calf occasionally faltered, its legs trembling beneath the weight of its own existence, but the mother's trunk was always there, steadying, guiding, and encouraging. Her eyes held a soft glow, reflecting the lingering fatigue but also the fierce instinct that had sustained them both. Kofi whispered gently, "You're almost there," a simple phrase that carried the weight of all the care and hope invested in this fragile life. The mother responded with a slow, deliberate movement of her trunk, a subtle acknowledgement that resonated beyond human understanding. It was a moment of connection, a quiet exchange that celebrated survival and the unexpected strength of maternal love. As they moved toward the horizon, the vast expanse seemed to embrace them, the dusty air shimmering with the heat of the day's end. The earth beneath their feet was marked with the soft impressions of their passage, a fleeting record of resilience that would soon be erased by the shifting winds. The sky blushed with the colors of dusk, pale oranges and deep purples, folding the world into a gentle twilight. The sounds of the wild softened, replaced by the distant murmurs of the herd, waiting silently for the return of one of their own. The scene was quiet, unassuming, yet filled with profound meaning, a testament to the fragile beauty of life in the wild. Kofi and the team stood back, their faces calm, but their hearts quietly full. They had witnessed the delicate arc of survival, the slow unfolding of a bond that had been tested by hardship and strengthened through tenderness. The memory of the calf's first breaths, its trembling steps, and the mother's unwavering care would linger long after the sun disappeared beyond the dusty horizon. In their silence, the rangers carried a shared gratitude for the chance to witness this story, for the resilience of life, and for the unexpected depths of love found in the wild. The mother and calf faded into the distance, becoming part of the landscape once more, shadows moving steadily across the plains, blending with the gathering dusk. The air held a quiet reverence, as if the earth itself acknowledged the fragile life saved and the enduring power of a mother's instinct. Kofi exhaled softly, the weight of the moment settling gently around him. The journey was far from over, but for now there was peace. A quiet goodbye spoken not in words, but in the soft sound of footsteps and the rustling grass. Carried forever on the wind.